Hi, my name is Lana from Djilyn Dreams. This video is made as additional instructions for artists who have chosen our D1 art by numbers kit. Anyone else is welcome to join as well to get some tips from us. The paint by number stage is pretty straightforward, just fill in the shapes with paint following instruction on the canvas or color diagram A. You might find the following tips useful though. First, in the areas of lighter colors, fade the lines and numbers on the canvas with white gesso provided in the set. Let it dry for at least 10 minutes. Second, to achieve saturated colors, apply 2 to 4 layers with drying time of 5 to 10 minutes between them. Third, pearl colors may benefit from smooth finish to have shiny look. To achieve this, apply paint in thin layers with softer brush. Now, having our paint by numbers done, we are ready for the next challenge, art by numbers stage. The difference is that we show you some techniques, but you choose whether to use them or not and how to use them. And today's exercise goal is to add some features to your artwork that will make it special and more personalized. For this stage, we will need our finished and dried canvas, paints and brushes, water and tissues. You can follow D1 color diagram B for recommendations on the color choice and area of application. First, we will work on softening the edges, namely the overcast edge and the moon terminator line. Starting with the overcast shape, we will add a layer of color number 6 on already dry shape painted in color number 5. I apply a minimal amount of paint in gentle, shallow touches, gradually increasing the value closer to the edge by adding more layers. For this technique, I prefer a flat brush with slightly firmer bristles. If you add more saturated, darker elements closer to the center of the overcast shape, it will give an effect of transparency to the clouds, so-called negative volume. A similar technique can be used to create a gradient of colors on the moon to soften the terminator line. You can also add some edgy or circular strokes to indicate the craters. The next stage will be to add some separate clouds, which will look closer and lower. For this purpose, I will once again choose the flat brush and apply a generous amount of color number 8 in short touching strokes. There are some suggestions where to place the clouds, but frankly speaking, it's entirely up to you. If the texture is too rough, you can smooth it down. I use softer pointed brush to do this. Now we will add some details to the trees. This should bring the trees visually closer. For this step, I have chosen the pointed brush and colors number 1, 2 and 3 to add some leaves on the larger side of the tree canopies. Now we are going to add some texture to the water. This will create the effect of ripples and glare. Firstly, we will blur the lines between the light blue number 5 and more saturated blue number 6. To achieve this, I'm using a pointed brush and the lighter of the two colors, applying it in generous horizontal strokes. Next, I will paint short lines with the lighter colors on the darker areas of water and vice versa, darker lines on the lighter areas. The more details will make rougher surface, the less will give still water look. You can add as much or as little details as you like. Today we have had a look at how to smooth edges on your paint by numbers and add more details to it. I hope you have enjoyed the lesson and like the new look of your artwork. Thank you very much for watching this video. We will appreciate your feedback in the comments section. If you enjoyed it, please click on the like button and watch some other tutorial videos on our channel. Create and have fun!